God, the God of Genesis, is always a God of new beginnings. So take a deep breath, because breath is God's gift to you. And let go of yesterday, because it's gone forever. Embrace this day. Lift up your heart. And we're going to find God together in the miracle of life. And the word for today is guard your mind, so that you can live with integrity of heart and integrity of soul. The garden, among other things, is kind of a picture of the mind. And I'm outside today on a beautiful day with beautiful life behind me. Farmer Mark actually has the John Deere tractor out today, and he's tending the garden. If I have to stop in the middle of this, that will be why. But I actually thought that's a very appropriate moment, because we're looking at the Garden of Eden and at the disruption of human life that comes to each one of us in the third chapter. But I want to start with this. You might remember in Genesis chapter 2, God gives Adam an assignment. It says he places Adam in the garden to work and to care for it. The writer of Genesis uses two words that are talked about a lot. That second word, to care for, means to guard it or protect it or keep out that which could damage it. Insofar as it refers to gardening or agriculture, that would mean human beings or animals that could threaten or destroy that which is living. A lot of folks, John Walton among them, talk about how those words to work and to protect or care for are also used of priestly tasks, the assignment that priests are given. And so there the idea would be you're guarding sacred space, you're on holy ground, so make sure nothing enters into that sacred space that could defile what is meant to be holy. So that's Adam's job. Job number one, make sure that you keep out of the garden anything that could corrupt it, could harm it, could damage it. That's your job. You're to be on the lookout for that. You are the guardian. And this is a very important backdrop, and it's going to get to you and me too. It's a very important backdrop to chapter 3, because in chapter 3, it begins with the words, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the other wild animals that God had created." And the serpent is going to bring temptation to human beings. Now, you will understand by this point, the idea here is not that there was a talking snake. You might have wondered why Eve just engages in this conversation. I have a friend named Tom. His favorite joke in the whole world was two sausages are in a frying pan, and one sausage says to the other one, "Man, is it hot in here?" And the second sausage says, "Oh my gosh, a talking sausage." Kind of loose, but if you wonder, doesn't it seem odd to Eve that there's a talking snake? This language would have been very clear, evident to folks in the ancient Near Eastern world that Israel was a part of, when they would talk about spiritual forces or spiritual entities or spiritual powers that are real but are murky, difficult for understand. This is a realm of magic, the supernatural. They would often use animals as expressions or representations to talk about this. So you might have heard of the Gilgamesh epic. In that, at one point, Gilgamesh's friend dies. And so Gilgamesh finds out, he wants to know how to live forever, and there's a plant that could make him immortal, but while he's swimming in a pond, a serpent eats it up. Or in Egyptian stories about cosmic creation, there is a serpent that tries to eat the sun up every morning. That's kind of a bad thing. So folks would understand, we're not talking about a talking snake here, but we are talking about a spiritual reality that is at work in this world, and that confuses and is too much for you and me to handle. One of the realities that I have learned about a lot over the last couple of years is that there is such a thing as spiritual warfare. And it's not mostly about circumstances or the special effects department. Mostly it happens in our minds. And there have been moments over these last years where I'm trying to work through something, think about it, pray about it, and it's clear to me there is a spirit of fear, and there's a kind of will attached to it. It wants me. Or a spirit of anger inside me where I get so resentful, so bitter at something somebody else has done, and it's like it wants me. It's like it's saying to me, "John, give yourself over to me." And a really helpful phrase for me is something that the angel says to Elijah in the Old Testament. The journey is too much for you. So, in chapter 3, what's really, really clear, given this backdrop, is there goes Farmer Mark working on the garden. Adam is not doing what Farmer Mark is doing. He's not doing his job. When the serpent shows up, to any reader, what would be really clear is Adam has not kept the serpent out of the garden. Job number 1 is protect, guard the garden, keep out of it that which could damage it or threaten it. And Adam is not doing that. Why? Now, he's not doing anything wrong yet. He hasn't yet chosen to disobey God, and yet there's trouble in the garden. Adam has lost a sufficiently strong vision of the good, of life in the garden. He's lost that to the extent that he is no longer trying to keep out of it what could threaten it or damage it. He's allowing that to come on in. He hasn't done anything wrong yet, but he's no longer committed to living the kind of life, to being on mission so that he is constantly moving towards the good. So now it's just a matter of time. There is a spiritual reality to this world. There is something that you and I are up against, and it's too big for us. The journey is too much for us. And the strange thing about it is we just kind of drift into it. In Hebrews chapter 12, it talks about laying aside the sin that so easily entangles, and it's that way. Our family was on vacation out west in Wyoming not too long ago, so I was reading the book Lonesome Doves. Wonderful book, but it talks about one character in particular, Jake Spoon, and he's quite charming, he's dashing, he's handsome. Life's pretty easy for him. And he's not a bad guy. He's a good guy. He actually rides with the Texas Rangers earlier on in life and goes after the bad guys. But he has this approach to life that is not solidly tethered to that which is good. So he finesses the truth. Carl, one of the Texas Rangers that was his friend, says at one point in the book that he realizes he can only believe about half of what Jake said. He's not a bald liar. But once he starts thinking about a scrape, his imagination will sort of work on it till he shades it in his favor. And eventually this character, Jake Spoon, ends up with horse thieves and murderers. And to his friend's great disappointment, they have to judge him. They have to arrest him, and he is hung at the end. And one of his old friends says, I wish he'd had the sense to stay with Lori. She might have aggravated him some, but she wouldn't have led him to do this, to throw his lot in with horse thieves and murderers. It's his darn laziness, Carl said. Jake just kind of drifts. Any wind can blow him. And that's what's going on now in this story in Genesis 3. There's a kind of drift at work. And instead of a strong movement towards what is good, what's the person that I want to be? This is a tiny example of this. I can do things way, way, way worse than what I'm about to tell you, but this is the dynamic that's in place. I borrow a truck from somebody. It's not my truck. It's real big. I go to park it, and without thinking, I'm going to need a bigger parking space than usual. I just try to jam it into a little space where I would usually put my regular car, and then I hear this sound, and there's a bump. And then I get out to look, and on the bumper, yep, there's a dent there. And the thoughts that initially come to me are, maybe that dent was already there. Or maybe the person from whom I borrowed the trunk, because it's not brand new, maybe they won't notice anything. Now, if I step back for just a moment and ask the question, what kind of person do I want to be? Would I want to be the kind of person that if he borrows a truck and then bumps it into something, honestly says to the person that he borrowed it from, hey, I bumped your truck, might have created this dent. I was too careless. I didn't carefully watch over what it is that you had entrusted to me, and I want to pay for it if there was damage. Of course that's who I want to be. Of course I know that. But what happens with a snake is it just whispers to you. It will keep you away from spiritual and moral clarity. it would be embarrassing to say this. I don't want to be in trouble. I might be able to avoid it. I might be able to get out of it. Don't have to be a ball liar. Just kind of shade things in my favor. So this now is the beginning of the way that we're understanding what's going on. As you think about the garden now, think about your mind. The garden is your mind. And there can be beauty and truth and goodness that goes on in my mind. But the reality is, all the time, there are whispers in my mind. You can have this. You can do this. You can avoid that. So today, name the snake. There's the challenge. Name the snake. I'm going to do that with my friend Rick. Whatever the snake is for you today, whatever it is that you could keep you from living the kind of life that could threaten the garden, that could compromise your integrity. Maybe it's your ego. Maybe it's envying somebody else. Maybe it's carrying bitterness in your heart. Maybe it's sex. Maybe it's a habit or an addiction of some sort. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's greed. Maybe it's judgmentalism. Whatever it is, name it. Find somebody in your life that you trust and tell them, here's the snake. He wants into my garden. I'm just acknowledging this to you. And ask God's help. Don't let that snake in. End of teaching. Beginning of your day in the garden with God.
Thanks for joining us. My name is Tim. I'm a part of the team here at Become New. If you'd like to receive the emails that go along with each video, you can let us know at becomenew.com/subscribe. Or if you'd like to receive a text alert whenever we release a new video, you can text the word BECOME to the number 855-888-0444. If you have a prayer request, please let us know. You can text that request to that same number, 855-888-0444. There's a group of us who meet every day to pray over those requests. So we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.